Ultamize. If you want to increase your output without increasing your hours, start using deadlines more deliberately. Not vague timelines, not open ended intentions, but clear, specific deadlines. Because without a defined endpoint, work tends to expand. It stretches, it drifts, and often it never fully completes. For example, if you tell yourself you will work on something today, that can mean anything. There's no pressure to finish, no urgency to move quickly. But if you set a specific deadline, the dynamic changes. Now there's a target, and targets create movement. Another important factor is that deadlines force prioritization because when time is limited, you have to decide what matters most. You can't do everything, so you focus on what's essential. For example, if you have 1 hour to complete a task, you're more likely to concentrate on the key elements instead of getting lost in minor details. That improves efficiency. It also improves clarity because you're making decisions based on time constraints. Another benefit of deadlines is that they reduce perfectionism because perfectionism often thrives in open ended situations. When there's no deadline, it's easy to keep adjusting, refining, and delaying completion. But when a deadline is in place, you're more likely to accept a finished result. For example, instead of trying to make something perfect, you focus on making it complete within the available time. That leads to progress. I know this firsthand. There have been times in the distant past where I said, well, I'd like to make an online course this month. And it was a struggle getting it done. These days, I give myself a deadline. I make one new course, one new limited series podcast every day. And by giving myself the deadline, it happens. It leads to progress, and progress leads to results. Another useful approach is to break larger tasks into smaller deadlines because large tasks can feel overwhelming. When something feels overwhelming, it's often delayed. But when you divide it into smaller parts, each with its own deadline, it becomes manageable. One of my goals is to create an entire library of 1,000 online personal development courses. Well, if I just woke up in the morning and said, oh, I got to do 1,000 courses, that would be overwhelming. That would be too difficult. But by giving myself a deadline of one per day, well, now I know, even taking plenty of vacation, it will be done over a 5 year period. And that works for me. So give yourself deadlines for each stage. That creates a series of targets, and each completed stage builds momentum. Another key point is accountability. Deadlines are often more effective when they are visible or shared, because when a deadline exists only in your mind, it's easier to ignore. Now, if your boss gives you a deadline, in a sense, that's easy. But if you are self directed, if you own your own company, your own business, you're a student or whatever, you've got to give yourself deadlines because no one else is going to do it. Write it down, communicate it with someone else. It becomes more real that way. You might note your deadlines in a calendar or share them with a colleague. That adds a layer of commitment, and commitment increases follow through. Another factor to consider is realism. Deadlines should be challenging but achievable because unrealistic deadlines can create unnecessary stress, and that can reduce effectiveness. For example, if a deadline is too aggressive, you may rush or become discouraged. We don't want that. But if it's too loose, it loses the impact. The goal is to find a balance that works for you, a time frame that creates focus without creating pressure that's unproductive. Another benefit of deadlines is that they help structure your day because when you have defined endpoints, your time becomes organized around them. You know when to start, you know when to finish. That structure reduces uncertainty and it makes your day more predictable. Another important point is that deadlines create a sense of completion because when you meet a deadline, you close a loop. That creates satisfaction. Feels good. I accomplished what I wanted to today. That satisfaction reinforces productive behavior. It makes it easier to continue. So start using deadlines intentionally. Define clear endpoints. Break larger tasks into smaller targets. Make your deadlines visible and choose timeframes that support focus. Because when you give your work a defined end, you create movement, and movement leads to results.